Okay. Before we get to I guess we can talk about the looting now as well here.
For looters out here, they have already arrested nearly 24 people inside evacuation areas. The National Guard has been brought in to bolster security, and some people have gone back home to try to defend what they have left. Chris Van Cleef has that from Altadena.
The sense of loss in Altadena is hard to describe. Destruction is everywhere. And then this island of 6 seemingly untouched homes saved by Pete Villani, who stayed behind to fight back the massive firestorm.
These are all my friends. These are all,
Once again, there's like 18 million people, and they've arrested, not charged, not convicted, just simply arrested under the suspicion of looting, 20 people. They say nearly 24 because the number is 20 so far. Okay? 20.
We're a family here. I love my neighbors. And it's like, you feel guilty because I survived. I couldn't save the whole block.
But even as he worked to put out hotspots, another threat emerged. Looters. He says he and a neighbor have chased off 2 groups attempting to break into the homes still standing.
What kind of person, what kind of human being would take advantage of somebody at that point? It's just like, I don't even want to say what I would do, but it's shocking.
Did you worry about your safety when you confronted the folks trying to get in that house?
No. I will say this. It would have been a bad day for them to do anything.
Do you feel like you're defending your neighborhood now?
Yep. That's why I'm here. This is why I stayed.
He's still standing watch even as the National Guard's armored vehicles are blocking evacuated neighborhoods and police are ramping up patrols.
Looting has zero tolerance. Looting or exploiting in the disaster areas will not be tolerated. Anybody caught looting or committing crimes in the affected area.
Like, I hope everybody understands, like, looting in a situation like this is completely unacceptable, okay? It is psychotic. Make no mistake, okay? Yeah, you have to be a real freak in dire circumstances to just be like, oh yeah, time for some free stuff. I'm gonna put my life at risk to go into smoldering ashes in these neighborhoods to secure like jewelry or I don't know, like a TV or something. Okay? It is completely unacceptable. Everybody understands this. My point on this, my point when I cover this stuff is not necessarily to say looting is good, you should let it happen, even though many right-wingers will hear what I'm saying and immediately say, look at Hassan, he loves theft. Okay? My point is that the media greatly overemphasizes these stories for 2 reasons. One, because it is a panic narrative of crime that people are predisposed with, that people love laser focusing on. If it bleeds, it leads. And the other reason why they do it is because this justifies the additional police presence. That way you don't think about why we're giving so much money to the cops and taking away money from firefighters. Even in a time when there is a massive wildfire, the media will always maintain this posture. Okay? Does the media portray anti-looting propaganda during hurricanes? Of course they do. Of course they do. Yes, they do this after every natural disaster. It's additionally crazy to do it after a wildfire, though, because like the fires are still going, it's still blazing through half of these neighborhoods when they're like, it didn't, bro. The Pacific Palisades was still on fire when the new district attorney went to his sister's destroyed house in the Pacific Palisades to cut a video talking about how he's going to kill looters. It's like, bro, you're standing in front of your sister's burned down house, and that's what you got on your mind. You're like, oh, if you try to come here to my sister's burned down house, like, I'll freaking kill you. Looting narratives go crazy. They're protecting us from imaginary looters. Do you remember the news during Katrina? Yeah. Katrina was particularly deadly because people did actually, quote unquote, take matters in their own hands. And they just started shooting random black people under the suspicion that they were looting. Okay? Luckily, it hasn't gotten to that degree here in California, Los Angeles. Woke California hasn't started doing that yet. But of course, the more people hit these like looter lines, the more people panic about this sort of thing, the higher the likelihood that you could potentially go to jail or be detained or arrested for the crime of trying to go back to your house while also being a black person or while also being a brown person or, not looking the neighborhood profile, you know? Yeah. The Leos in the evac zone are standing around waiting for looters with boosted funding. The firefighters bust their asses with diminished resources and reduced funding, and the slaves make $20 to work 24 hours in the trenches. Exactly. I think there is a real reason for why police and even the National Guard must create a security perimeter around these disaster zones. Okay? That I get that. You do that specifically so that you can open up pathways for emergency vehicles in times of need. You can do that, or you must do that, to ensure that random people don't go back to their houses, and then that becomes an additional problem for the emergency services to deal with because now you have to rescue people. Okay? That makes sense. You can just say that and, be perfectly fine, but they have to overemphasize the looting aspect. Okay? They have to consistently talk about how they're going to blow away any looter that even looks in the direction of a house, no matter how smoldering. Okay?
Will be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
This was the view from Jonathan Esham's home Tuesday as the Eaton fire raced towards it.
Almost what I would say.
Yeah, people needed supplies to survive because National Guard couldn't reach them. It fueled people taking the law into their own hands on top of spooking cops with the rhetoric. It contributed to killings like the Danziger Bridge tragedy. This is in Katrina, the famous Danziger Bridge tragedy, where they just straight up shot like a bunch of black people under the suspicion that they were looting. I think this is dangerous and irresponsible by local and national news media to consistently heighten the tensions in times where people are already in crisis.
The surface of the sun might look like, it was just pure chaos and panic everywhere.
He evacuated, and while the fire stayed out, it appears someone tried to break in, busting out a window and trying to pry this one open.
The idea that somebody could have been in your house while you guys were evacuated.
It's horrifying. Like, I don't even want to imagine it.
A horror disgustingly man-made in the middle of this massive natural disaster. For CBS Saturday Morning, I'm Chris Van Cleve in Altadena, California.
Jesus Christ. What? Cops seem unnecessarily aggressive too?
I like that bed. I had
this is a YouTuber.
Purple pillow that Mel gave me. It was also very comfy. This is my hamper. Got my hamper right here, all my dirty clothes. Yeah, they need to get washed for sure. This is where my desk was in this corner. And one thing I'm very sad I didn't get out of here before it burned down was my laptop that had a lot of my family and friend photos on it. Photos of my girlfriend and I, the cats that unfortunately were not backed up anywhere else. And it seems to be gone now. This is the office. This was the small office in my house that was really just used for storage for the greater part of my stay here. You can see that there's some tech stuff in the corner, like this this PC. PC still got a power supply in it, so I'm going to be aware of that. But I believe this was a Cooler Master case.
Oh, it's earlier before the police confront him?
Of course, we are.
We're
meeting up with one of my friends, Alvaro, right now, who has a truck. It's much higher off the ground than my car, which we're gonna need if we plan to access my house.
I don't mean to be rude, but how do people in that area not have important things in a box by the door right now? Dude, I don't think you understand. The Altadena fires just came out of nowhere, and so did the Pacific Palisades ones. Like, it straight up escalated to this point that no one thought it would have. It happened virtually in a matter of like 30 to 40 minutes. This is not an area where there is a lot of wildfire impact. The reality of the matter is that it also, I think, like it's such a, like it's a normal, mostly concrete region. It's not like it's surrounded by forests either. I mean, there's forest around it, but like it just burst into flames, you know? There's not really much you can do. That's why people say it's unprecedented.
So McDonald's is the rendezvous point where we're going to meet Alvaro. He should be here any second. Alvaro and his doomsday truck have arrived. Hug it out, brother. Holy crap. Whoa. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Like, look at these streets. Like, does this strike you as a area that's like predisposed to wildfires like normally? No, it's not. It's on fire every year at this point. Assume your house is going to burn. There are certain areas that are at higher risk of, at higher risk of wildfires. The expectation is not that like every single part of Southern California could light on fire at any given moment. Especially in January too. That's another part of this. Like, it's not even wildfire season. It's supposed to be.
We're at the intersection, about to pull onto my street, but it looks blocked off. All right, here we go. We're gonna have to fabricate a bit of a story here to see if the cops will let us by. We're just gonna say that we're gonna swing by my house, or what's left of it, to grab my office keys if they're still surviving. That way I can actually have a place to stay for the night. So much ash.
Are they only letting
So much ash.
one person in at a time, or what's the story? Let me get out and talk to him.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He called for backup.
Okay.
Wow, he called for backup. Why is he putting his hand on his fucking gun?
They are telling us to go down. They're not super happy.
Oh, I gotta wait for them to go so I can turn around. I'm trying to.
Yeah, man. We're trying to do our job.
Okay, all right.
Don't drive past cones or anything else. Go.
Wow.
It does look like they're letting people walk up. They just don't want vehicles driving up the hill. So I think we're just going to park and just go by foot.
Look how good the cops are, dude. I'm so glad that they're protecting and serving. You know? Oh, that's so sick.
Alvaro brought shovels for us so that we can sift through the ash a bit easier. So we got 2 shovels, and Mike has a hoe because he has a...
They don't want the vehicles in there, for those of you who don't know. They don't want the vehicles in there because they don't want looters, okay? That's it. Because they think that everyone that's coming in to the neighborhood with a vehicle is not actually people like this who just want to go through the rummage through their remains, okay? But instead, that they are all up to no good. They're there for nefarious purpose.
a hoe.
Wow.
Unfortunately, my house is pretty much the last one on the street. So we actually have maybe a mile and a half to walk up this very steep hill before we get there. Quite a bit of scenery on the way.
Palisades median house price $3.5 million. This is not in the Palisades. This is Altadena, I think.
Like this broken power line that's been split in two.
Right? He's in Altadena, right, chat? Yeah. This is not like a particularly expensive neighborhood. By the way, I this is like kind of sad, but the cops straight up in a matter of seconds proved the point I was making. If you're black or brown, especially so, where they're just like so gung-ho. They got their hands like just understand, your house is burned to the ground. You're there to go back to the remains to see what you can sift through, okay, in the rubble. And you are faced with a complete dipshit who was ready to kill you on the spot for no reason. Okay? They just walk up to you, hand on hip, hand on their service weapon. You're like, oh, pull out now. Turn around now. It's like, what are you doing? What's happening here? Like, what an insane situation.
And hanging precariously, seemingly by a thread. This power line is completely sideways. That motorcycle's all right. Those cars are not. This used to be a house.
The craziest one is the Honda dirt bike that I saw that was like still functional. The Honda dirt bike that was still functional, even though it was half burned, like half of it was charred. The plastic was just not from this video. I saw it on TikTok. And they give more money to the cops and the firefighters for looters instead of the actual fires. Yeah.
It is no longer. The damage is getting...
How are they supposed to know who's a looter and who's not? Okay, this is the problem with the initial assessment that like everyone that's trying to go back here is a looter. Just so you understand. But also, they demand identification to make sure that the only people that are allowed into these areas are people that live there. But there's still obviously issues with that as well. What if you left your house in a panic and your ID is burned to a crisp? Okay, what do you do then? You just can't go back to your house? Okay. What if your address is not of your residence at this point? What do you do then? There are plenty of people who have old IDs that they never actually updated their addresses on.
getting increasingly intense, and the air quality is getting increasingly worse. Really?
Yeah, how do you know who committed a crime or not? Should cops just arrest everyone then? Silly ass question.
Gotta wear your K95s here. It's getting pretty hard.
I really want you to unpause to see the fucking vehicle they lit in. Cops are just shit. They were about to get picked up by a truck that the cops led into
Harder
the
to
area.
breathe. Another sketchy power line, and something still smoldering over there. We're gonna go around this caution tape cautiously. That is, that's the bottom of a power line. Whoa, that is like molten metal. Oof. Coming from the car.
Look at the brake.
Holy crap.
We literally were working on this.
Is that a Porsche?
All right. Wow. This is brutal. Yeah. And some lots are just completely leveled. This one just has a chimney. That's all that's left, is a chimney. I mean,
the other part of this is like, this area is totally devastated. Like, what are looters going to loot in this area, man? Like, I get if there is an evacuation order placed upon certain certain areas where there's like homes that still remain, but this is like all ash. Like, what are they gonna? They're gonna loot the cinder? Oh man, I love free charcoal. You know what I'm saying?
I've passed by these houses a million times, and some of them I've admired, you know, just looking at the front yards and how they did things and taking mental notes for future plans in my own house.
There's the one house that it was stayed intact.
Yeah, it's looking a little different today. Wires. Hopefully they've cut all the power to those, but better to be safe than sorry.
That was, or an RV? That was, or an RV? Dude, that's fucked up.
What?
There's a possum in this thing.
Is that a possum?
Oh yeah, there's a dead possum in a trap. It's all ash. Literally, the next house is lootable. Brother, there is one house that's standing. What are you talking about? You saw this entire neighborhood, and there is one house that is intact in the entire neighborhood. Looters are going to be hitting that one house? Is that what you think is going on? Do you think this is appropriate use of funds in that regard? 26-month subscriber. Still, anyone and everyone is actually always invested in looting. Okay? Everyone and anyone. All right? All the time. We have to hyper focus on this. Okay? We have to make sure that this is the most. I like that you sat through me pausing and doing commentary for 20 minutes over this video to find the one house that's intact next to a house that is burned to the ground in an entire city block that is completely reduced to ash. And you're like, well, what if the people wanted to loot this house? You're right, man. What if? You're right. Is this a normal way to exist? I don't understand it. I feel like this is not city behavior, but I guess with the way that suburbs work, there's more and more people like this who operate with this mentality where they're constantly in a panicked situation where they're just like, because if chatter, I don't know if you live in a city or not, but like anyone could technically walk up to you in the middle of the road and just put one in the back of your head. Okay? Anyone, literally anyone could do that right now. When you go outside to get groceries, someone could walk up to you and stab you to death. Okay? Do you think that that is a valid way to approach everyday existence? Do you think that that kind of panic is, I don't know, healthy to have? Great, new fear unlocked. Yeah, anyone could walk up to you right now. Anyone could walk up to you right now when you're on your way to pick up chicken tendies at your local grocery store. Walk up to you and go, hey, give me all your money, and then shoot you in the head. If it's not healthy, if it wasn't healthy thinking, why do conservatives already think it? Because they're unhealthy. That's the problem. They're deeply unhealthy. The point is, especially if you live in a city, there's a certain level of danger that can always occur, but there's also a tremendous amount of safety that comes from being around other people. And if you've never lived in a normal city, it is impossible for you to comprehend this. That's the reason why when Austin stays with me and he hears constant police sirens, okay, on major roads, he freaks out. He just thinks like bedlam is happening because in his neighborhood, if he constantly heard in his suburb, if he constantly heard police sirens, something terrible must be happening. Okay. While the likelihood that you have a lot of people around you increases the likelihood that danger might come your way. Okay. There's also safety in being surrounded by other human beings.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, all the way down pretty much.
I guess they are letting trucks in.
All right, this is good.
Okay, this is my next door neighbor's house.
Thank you.
Didn't make it.
Holy shit.
And my place.
Is this damage control? What do you mean? Anyway, I personally am more afraid of like quiet suburbs. Anyway, here's some updates from local officials on Eaton Fire.
And finally, to our Los Angeles County residents, please be assured that we will continue to battle these wildfires until they are fully contained. We stand alongside all of you as we begin to plan for repopulation of evacuated areas, disaster recovery, and the rebuilding of your homes and
Research and reports often show that looting during natural disasters is rare and communities typically come together to help one another. The belief that looting is widespread can be more reflective of societal anxieties than reality, and it might be perpetuated by capitalist structures that emphasize the importance of property over human welfare. Yeah. No, absolutely. And this doesn't mean that like there is no looting, okay? This doesn't mean that there is no looting that occurs. Of course there is, all right? Of course, yes, there are really desperate people who do incredibly vicious things. But if your expectation is that like there's constant danger that is going to happen in the aftermath of a natural disaster that comes from your fellow man, you're going to lose your mind.
That we're talking about here, that's residential community. It's not wildland. It's a residence, and these are people's houses. So huge Herculean task to get through all this down here. We have a ton of work. It's many days, many weeks of work. Just wanted to highlight that a little bit. As we come through by the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, this is looking good. Again, crews engaged, boots on the ground, mopping up. All through the National Forest up here, we continue to make really good progress up there. The weather's in our favor. We're using air tankers, we're using helicopters, all the tools in our toolbox to go get and put this fire out right where you see it right here. So that'll be our goals in the coming days. So thank you very much.
Now we're going to have Los Angeles County Sheriff Commander Tanya E. Plunkett.
Good afternoon. I'd like to take this time to update you on the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department's effort in dealing with the Eaton Canyon fire. Currently, in response to the fire, our staffing has increased to approximately 500 personnel. Within the personnel, we have active missions, which include controlling traffic points, of approximately 46 hard closures, and traffic control. We also have roving security to deal with looting and address those issues. And when necessary, respond to welfare requests and at the direction of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. As you may, as you may be aware that last night we instituted a curfew order which went into effect from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and currently within the evacuation zones. It's important to know that these zones are going to be strictly enforced, and the reasons behind them is to enhance public security and address enhance public safety and address public security concerns. Within the curfew, we're asking everyone to stay clear of the affected zones unless they are authorized personnel or emergency responders. Anyone found in violation of the curfew order will be subject to a misdemeanor crime and subject to $1,000 fine.
Imagine your city being on fire and you use your platform to play Marvel Rivals and ban anyone that talks about the fires. Who did that? Why are you taking your anxieties and anger and frustration with other content creators to my chat for some reason? Are you okay? Like, see, this is what I'm Pokemon. Okay, dude.
6 a.m. and in at 6 p.m. That search and rescue team, we are working jointly with our partners from Los Angeles County Fire Urban Rescue, the coroner's office, FEMA, OES, and the use of cadaver dogs to search for remains and reunite families, most importantly. These searches will be a part of a grid search, like I mentioned, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. due to safety concerns and our inability to operate during nighttime hours. Unfortunately, we report that we have 8 deaths within the Eaton Canyon fire area that was affected by the fire. And in an effort to deal with the death and the tragedies as a result of this fire, we do have, working with our partners, family assistance centers that are open to provide information to people looking for missing family members, and that location is the Pasadena Civic Center. It will be comprised of OEM, sheriff's deputies, LAPD, Red Cross, the medical examiner, and
yeah, they also implemented a curfew, a 6 p.m. curfew, while simultaneously there's like evacuation orders in place, which I think is so wild because at the same time, it's like they're doing the curfew because they're like, oh, if you're ever in or around your house after 6 p.m., that means you're a looter. Like then the arrest numbers are going to go up. Basically, that's it. Because the assessment in that situation is like if you're in or around an impacted neighborhood after 6 p.m., that must mean that you're there to do, illegal things like stealing. Is there still a fire near you, chatter? I am in the heart of Los Angeles, which means I am surrounded 3 parts by fire. Although, having said that, I'm also very far away at the same time. Like, this is the situation right now. Look. Oh. I'm in this area. Okay? I'm in this area. There's the Eaton fire, near Pasadena, Altadena. And then there is the Palisades fire that has seemingly made its way into densely populated areas of Encino. But overall, the West Hollywood area is not impacted directly. Can you share this link? This is Watch Duty. It has been an incredibly helpful app. I've been using it since these fires started. Is Will's house fine? Yes, but I believe that they are covered and caked in smoke. And Will was saying that it's probably not healthy to inhale that level of smoke still. Yeah.
From the city.
New Orleans Police Department versus unarmed civilians, the Danziger Bridge, 19th years later.
Of New Orleans.
If you want to understand what the looting panic turns into, here is a terrifying story.
Nearly empty. still partly underwater, and waiting for life and hope to return.
Welcome to another episode of In Range. Yes, this is a republication of a video that I filmed 9 years ago. I sat on this footage for 4 years and wasn't sure what to do with it, and published it in 2020, realizing that these things needed to be talked about more, not less, especially with the events going on in that year. And this video is being republished on the 19th anniversary of the events discussed in this video. And 19 years later, it's hard to look around and say that anything's really gotten better. All the men that were ostensibly police officers that killed these people and maimed a family are now out and free. And situations like this are recurring over and over and over again. And if another disaster like Katrina were to happen again today, I don't think it would be any different. And that's a problem. And that's an issue we need to face, and a situation in which we have to understand that there's something wrong when agents of the state can come and kill you based on your color, your identity, whether or not you own a gun, whether or not they think you might have had a gun or not, whether you do or don't. And then do things like try to cover it up with, quote, a ham sandwich or a drop gun. Or worse, don't even try to cover it up and realize that qualified immunity and the system will protect them.
Don't be afraid of being sued. Everybody gets sued. Just a chance for overtime.
Philology.
Now, did some of these men serve some time in prison? Yes. Did they serve the time that you or I would have received for doing what they did? Absolutely not. So in this instance, when we hear Lieutenant Colonel Grossman talk about how they are the samurai, well, he's right. They are held at a higher rank than the rest of us.
I saw on Twitter that your house burned down. Is that true? What do you think? Does it look like it's burned down? Am I streaming from the ashes?
Civilians here in this country, and the militarization of the police, and the situations that are occurring within it, and the systemic problems that are occurring because of it, continue 19 years later. I hope you watch this video. I hope you think about the fact that this is still going on today, and take a moment to remember the lives lost on that day, on September 4th, 2005, when people were just trying to find some water in a natural disaster that was actually man-made due to the inefficiency of the U.S. government in protecting the city with its levees and corporations allowing derricks to crash through levees and flood entire neighborhoods here. If you want to learn more about that, check this video above regarding the Battle of New Orleans. Anyways, a somber note on a somber day, 19 years later. Please watch. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of In Range. This is a difficult topic today.
During Katrina, we were out of power and listening to a radio news report from a NG helicopter flying over NOLA. The reporter was talking about the floods until we heard shots, and one of the NG goons said, "I got that fucker," and the broadcast cut out. Stuck with me to this day.
And the footage you're going to see was filmed 4 years ago. Yes, 4 years ago. And the reason I've been sitting on this video content is because I haven't been sure when I could publish it. The reality is that I've been waiting for an opportunity to publish this video in which it would not be seen in the light of the current situation or current events, because people would think that I'm publishing this in response to a current event. And the reality is there's never been a chance in 4 years to publish this video where it wouldn't be.
You said the fear of living your day-to-day life is dumb. That why do you talk about how systemic racism still exists, which people fear any interaction with a cop, which definitely isn't healthy? Okay, I don't think you understand. Think about it like the statistical likelihood of something bad happening to you. Okay? If police and police presence disproportionately harm people of color, there is a high likelihood of an interaction turning south with a cop, especially when the structures have allowed a police officer to do whatever they want to you. Okay? On the other hand, given that you are surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people living in a densely packed city environment on a day-to-day basis, the likelihood of you being a victim of a crime is infinitely lower in any random interaction. There's a reasonable fear to have, or a reasonable assessment, and an unreasonable one. That's the argument that I'm making. Okay? You're more likely to be struck by lightning than get killed by a cop? That's really interesting that you said that, because I wasn't talking about a police just killing you. Okay? That's not what I was stating. Do you understand? Also, how many people die by lightning every... Wait, there is no way that's true. How many people die by lightning every year in the U.S.? Because, Chatter, you are so incredibly wrong. Okay? You are 100 times... There are 100 times more people that die in the hands of cops every year than get killed by lightning. Why did you say that? $20 people die by lightning every year in the United States of America. 2,000 people die by cops. Well, maybe not 2,000. What is it? Let's see. Police killings in... Oh, it's not because of race. Wait, what? That's crazy. So you just put forth a completely ridiculous number and then immediately got disproven and then moved on to say, oh, that's not the case. I was like, it's just stupid. Stop. It's not about race. It's not about race at all. It's not 2,000. It's 1,000. I apologize. So not 100 times more likely, but 50 times. Police kill around 1,000 people, give or take, every single year. It's a 50x multiplier. Listen, bro. As far as violence goes, an estimated 250,000 civilian injuries are caused by law enforcement officers annually. 15% of civilians who experience police threat of use of force during legal interventions are injured. 250,000 civilians are injured by law enforcement officers annually. It's not just about if someone dies of a police attack is likely not because of race. Oh my God. Yeah, there are racist cops, but I don't know why you're in here trying to argue something that I wasn't even saying. This is like what you are trying to argue, okay? Police are disproportionately more police have a higher likelihood of targeting you and even apprehending you and arresting you, okay, if you are not white. That's it.
Seen as a commentary on a current event. So I'm going to give up on that idea because it's never going to happen, and I'm going to publish it because I think it's important to be published. One of the topics that I, Carl, cover here on InRange TV are issues of historical significance that I believe are intentionally left out of the general population's narrative, culturally lost, whether it is Old West or modern, things that have been intentionally left off of the general understanding is something that I believe should be brought to light because it's those topics that really give us insight into society, whether it's historical or current. And the one that I'm covering today is about the murder of a number of innocent and unarmed civilians on Danziger Bridge, September 4th, 2005, just a few days after Hurricane Katrina. And while you are inevitably going to paint this in the light of whatever current event is going on today, whether you're watching it right now in May of 2020 or watching it in November of 2025, I have an unsettling feeling that there'll be something going on in this country that will make you think that this video was published in response to that, and that is not the case. I also am going to dub in moments through this video, things that I have been able to find out more after the fact and hopefully correct the narrative. The other thing that I do want you to understand is that this is wholly my work.
Okay, I'm not gonna watch the whole thing. I think it's not. It's not a. I mean, it's relevant to the looting argument, but I think it's like directly talking about the Danziger Bridge. The directly talking about the Danziger Bridge shootings is probably a better way to do it. On the morning of September 4, 2005, 6 days after Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, members of the New Orleans Police Department, ostensibly responding to a call from an officer under fire, shot and killed 2 civilians at the Danziger Bridge, a 17-year-old James Brissett and a 40-year-old Ronald Mason. 4 other civilians were wounded. All the victims were black. None were armed or had committed any crime. Madison, a mentally disabled man, was shot in the back. The shootings caused public anger and further eroded the community's trust of the New Orleans Police Department and the federal response to Hurricane Katrina overall. The New Orleans Police Department, of course, predictably attempted to cover up the killings, falsely reporting that 7 police officers responded to a police dispatch reporting an officer down, and that at least 4 suspects were firing weapons at the officers upon their arrival. Reverend Raymond Brown, the local head of the National Action Network, described the shootings as a racial tragedy. On August 5th, 2011, a federal jury in New Orleans convicted 5 NOPD officers of myriad charges related to the cover-up and deprivation of civil rights. An attorney for the U.S. Justice Department described the case as the most significant police misconduct prosecution in the U.S. since the Rodney King beating case. However, the convictions were vacated on September 17, 2013 by U.S. District Judge Kurt Engelhardt due to prosecutorial misconduct, and a new trial was ordered. The Justice Department appealed the decision to vacate the convictions, but a federal appeals court agreed that a new trial was warranted. On April 20th, 2016, the 5 former officers pleaded guilty to various charges related to the shooting and in return received reduced sentences ranging from 3 to 12 years in prison. 3 of the officers are white and 2 are black. Officers arrived in a budget rental truck. None of them were in uniform. They were armed with rifles, including AK-47s, at least one of which was unauthorized, and an M4 carbine. A witness, Casimir Gaston, described the officers as lining up like at a firing range. The officers opened fire without warning on the Bartholomew family and friend who had been walking to a grocery store and were then sheltering behind a concrete barrier. As a result of this initial shooting, 17-year-old James Brissett, a family friend, was killed. 4 other civilians were wounded. Susan Bartholomew's arm was partially shot off and later had to be amputated. Her husband Leonard was shot in the back, head, and foot. The Bartholomew's teenage daughter Leisha was shot 4 times. Jose Holmes Jr., a friend of Brissett's, was shot in the abdomen, the hand, and the jaw. 2 brothers who fled the scene, Ronald and Lance Madison, were pursued down the bridge by officers Gisevius and Falcon in an unmarked Louisiana State Police vehicle. Falcon fired his shotgun from the back of the car at Ronald, a developmentally disabled man who later died from his injuries. The autopsy found that Ronald sustained 7 gunshot wounds, 5 of them in his back. Bowen was later convicted of stomping Madison on the back before he died, though this conviction was overturned for a lack of physical evidence. Lance was then taken into custody and charged with 8 counts of attempting to kill police officers. He was held in custody for 3 weeks before being released without indictment. No weapons were recovered at the scene, and both police and civilian witnesses testified that the victims had been unarmed. They basically set out to engage in a paramilitary death squad as you know, police officers not even using their service weapons, using their own personal guns, because they wanted to go out and shoot and kill what they perceived, to get free kills, legal kills on what they perceived were looters. Okay? They weren't even in police gear. They had no indications that they were police. American hero Chris Kyle, American hero in air quotes, Chris Kyle also lied about sniping black people off of the top of the Superdome. Okay? Sniping what he called looters, getting confirmed kills. This was, of course, not real. And it was crazy that he thought that this would make him look good. He was never actually even, there were no repercussions for him even lying about committing this racist act of violence. Many years after, he still got a wonderful little movie about his completely made up record. At that point, you can't even call it stealing valor. I would say that he was stealing vices.